Good morning, guys. I want to talk to you today about season extension. Coming live to you from our high tunnel here at HQ at Coonskin this morning. You might notice that our towers are a little empty in the background. COVID kindly dampened our ability to get stuff in our high tunnel this year with work the way that it was. So thought we would go ahead and try to show you guys what it looks like in here with our towers a little bit. And since we're talking about season extension, we're inside our high tunnel. So what better thing to talk about inside the high tunnel than season extension? If you guys got any questions, please just add them to the comments. I got Connie back here running the camera for me, so she will see your questions and let me know what they are, and we'll try to answer them as we go along, so feel free just to type, okay? So season extension is the topic, and what is season extension? It's anything that allows a producer or a grower to produce a crop longer than the normal growing season allows. So here in West Virginia, we can look at that in two different ways. We can start early in the season, let's say in March, and start early in the spring and use our season extension, or we can start right now, the 1st of October, and going into our frost and season extension pretty much up to December on certain crops depending on what you're going to grow. Really in West Virginia, January and February are about the only 2 months in a high tunnel that you really can't produce too much. Some people do with some alternative heating methods. We're going to talk to you guys today about more stuff that you can do in the backyard, and also a large scale producer, small scale producer can do too. You can achieve this through several different methods. That also allows a lot of creativity to the producer, because you don't have to have a high tunnel. So you don't this is sort of the end all for season extension, is to have these high tunnels. But if you've got the small backyard, we'll talk about low tunnels and some tents, frost cloth, things like that. So you have a lot of options when it comes to season extension about what you can do in your backyard or on your farm. There's a wide range of costs associated with it. Obviously, a high tunnel is very expensive. Low tunnels would probably be the cheapest way to go. And you can be utilized on different production systems. So you can do it in raised beds, you can do it in containers, obviously the high tunnel, you can do it in the ground, hydroponically too. So cold frames are probably the first season extension that most of us probably think about if we've got grandparents. Most of our grandparents did a lot of cold frames. I know mine did. Basically, those are small boxes that are comprised of wood. Now they're plastic, they're composite materials that they come in. But basically, you've got a window on top that lets light in and kindly traps the heat in at night. You can purchase kits online now. There's a lot of cold frame kits that you can buy from a lot of different distributors. Amazon, I know, has several, but a lot of the gardening sites do, like A.M. Leonard, Gardener Supply. All of those companies now carry different raised bed kits. I've seen them in polycarbonate. I've seen them in cedar. It doesn't really make a difference what the sidewalls are made with, just as long as it has a clear top to be able to let the sun's light in and also to trap heat. So basically, a cold frame would be a mini greenhouse. Generally, the lid on top is sloped, so if you see these are going to have a slope, and you kindly want to put that facing at a south or southwestern, southeastern face, so you can maximize as much sun as possible. That also will shield rain and snow. If it falls on there, it'll melt and slope the water away. If you have it flat on top, it's just going to accumulate. It could collapse, or the snow may freeze there and not melt off and kill your plants due to no light getting in. They're not the best system for production agriculture, so really if you're trying to grow food for sale, cold frames probably are not the way to go. But for the backyard grower that's growing for his family and maybe the neighborhood or friends, cold frames can be an excellent choice to use in the backyard. You can harden off your plants in cold frames too, so you can germinate your plants, let's say starting in the middle of January. You can start growing your tomatoes and pepper seeds. By the time you get to the 1st of March, you can start carrying those plants outside and harden them off for a couple of weeks to get them acclimated to the outside temperature, and then go ahead and put those in your high tunnel and or in the garden if you're going to be willing to go out and cover your plants up every night or when we get cold days. So I know some dedicated people like to do that. They want to have that first tomato in the middle of May, and the only way to really do that is to get a season extension and get a jump start on the growing season. You can also utilize these systems to grow greens in too. When I was a kid, my family, we had a long row of cold frames. So not only were we using that to grow solanaceous crops like our eggplant, peppers, and tomatoes, but we'd also would go ahead and grow different like black-seeded Simpson, green onions. All of those things can be planted in the 1st of February, middle of January in cold frame. And if you manage it right, you can actually be harvesting that stuff by the 1st of March too. So, just don't think about it as your summertime crops. You can use it as a mini greenhouse to grow some cool season crops in there too a lot earlier. Same thing on the fall. Right now you could go in and plant onions and some lettuces right now in your cold frame and be harvesting that all the way up through Thanksgiving and Christmas time if you do it right. I will tell you guys that some technology has changed. A lot of the raised bed kits you buy, you have to manually go out and open the top up. So if you're not going to be at home at 10 o'clock in the morning, once the temperature goes above 45 degrees to open up the lid, you're going to end up cooking your plants inside that cold frame. It very easily could heat up to over 100 degrees by 1 o'clock in the afternoon by just trapping in the sun's heat. So you got to have somebody to raise that lid up to let the heat out during the day, and then you've got to be able to shut it towards the end of the evening, about 2 hours before sunlight, so that way you can trap some of the sun's energy in there to keep it warm overnight. One of the greatest things that I've seen come along, they've been around for about 15 years now, is a hinge that you can actually buy from the suppliers. Usually when you're looking on the catalog and you're wanting to buy a cold frame, usually they'll have this on the same page, or when you put it in your Amazon shopping cart, it'll say, hey, customers bought this too. But it's actual hinge that's got chemical inside of it, some type of liquid. It's not mercury, that will actually open your lid up. It'll move 70 pounds of weight and open your lid up when the temperature starts to rise above 55 degrees inside. Once the temperature drops below 55, it'll shut itself. And for us busy people, I think that's a great investment. The last time I checked, I think those things ran about $70 a pair. They're a little pricey, but well worth it. So you don't have to remember, hey, it's 11 o'clock and it's not warm enough yet to open my lid up. That thing will automatically do it as the temperature rises. So I would definitely recommend you guys take a look at those if you want to make your cold frame a little bit more automated. Your second thing that you can do is grow tents and plant shelters. Now, a bunch of this stuff's on the market, and I can't even keep up with it all. They're all the time constantly changing. If you look on our PowerPoint presentation that we've got right there in the upper right-hand corner, I've actually used these type of springy tents. They actually fold down and collapse and then pop back open. There's a zipper on the top that you can actually zip and lay that back to let the heat, so you don't have to pull it off of your plant every day. These things work great. Once again, I really would not consider these for somebody who's wanting to do production agriculture, unless you're wanting to invest a lot of money to buy, a couple hundred of these different tents to put over each individual plant. But for the backyard grower or the home gardener, these things are fantastic to use. They come in different sizes, they come in different colors. Obviously, if you live in a northern climate, further here, you're in the mountains of West Virginia, or let's say Pennsylvania, or further north, you may want to go with one of the green, darker ones to kind of trap in some more of the sun's energy throughout the day. Right here where we're at in West Virginia, the Charleston, West Virginia area, and further south, as long as you're not on the higher elevations, you can probably get by with these opaque ones. If you're going to start your season extension in the middle of March and you're in the higher terrain, you can still use these clear ones. You should be okay by that time of the year that you're still getting enough sunlight that you can trap in enough of the heat. But if you're trying the season extension in December, January, February, the darker ones may be the better way to go to trap in some of the heat. They work very similar to cold frames in the fact that they allow light in, but do a good job of insulating and keeping the heat trapped in. Basically, these are made out of greenhouse materials now. A lot of greenhouse growers, if you're watching this, are probably looking at these little grow tents and you're like, what is that material? It's ripstop material that we still go ahead and use on our high tunnels, or it's just different types of plastics that we use in agriculture anyways. They're very durable. They last year after year as long as you're careful not to snag them or rip them. That's about the only thing that really damages them. I wouldn't recommend leaving them out through the winter because the cold tends to break down the plastic a little bit more than the heat does. So I would definitely bring these things back in December and leave them in during the winter time and deploy them again in March when you're ready to start putting stuff out. They work well for both early season extension and late season. So you can use these right now starting, or you can start at the 1st of February, middle of February, depending on where you're at here in West Virginia, and do your season extension with these little grow tents. Row covers and low tunnels. Now these are my personal favorite to season extension with. And not only do I do season extension personally in my garden, but I will actually take these plastics off and then go to an insect netting during the warm months to actually exclude insects off my certain plants. Now that doesn't work for plants that need to be pollinated, but broccoli and cauliflower and things like that we got to worry about moths and worms eating, you can put this insect netting right over the hoops that you had your plastic on and clip that down and keep on growing without having to have an insect issue through the warm months. They work well in ground or in raised beds. I've done it both ways myself, commercially and in my backyard. They're very similar to a hoop house, and they attach to the bed or stake to the ground. So basically what you would want to do here is PVC pipe works the best. I have seen people use metal EMT conduits before, but you have to buy a special bender, and they do tend to rust after a few years. The PVC, if you go with the electrical PVC conduit, which would be sold in the electrical aisle, not in the plumbing aisle of your big box stores, and it's the gray conduit. If you look on the side of that gray conduit, it will say sunlight resistant. That's the stuff you want to buy. Don't buy the white PVC pipe. You can get about 4 or 5 years of use out of the white PVC pipe before it will actually break down with the sun eating the plastics. There's not much more cost associated with buying a 10-foot joint of white PVC versus buying a sunlight resistant gray PVC pipe. I don't know it off the top of my head, but we're talking probably less than 25 cents each piece of pipe. So it's my recommendation just to go ahead and buy a 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch plastic conduit that's gray, that's sunlight resistant, and you'll get to use that stuff for years. As you bend it and put it in the ground, it will actually memory that way, so when you pull it up in the fall, it will not spring back out straight. It will actually stay bent, and you can store that stuff in the barn or behind the barn underneath the building, or you can even leave it lay out with being sunlight resistant. There's clips that you can buy that actually snap onto 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch plastic PVC that will hold your row cover in place. You can get a bag of those, about 10 for about $5. You need probably 1 on the top and 2 down on each side of each arch that you're going back. If you look on the second page there for the row covers and low tunnels, you kindly see what I'm talking about with the pipe vent and the clips on there. That's actually insect netting, a little bit more than the frost cloth. And this is the most common type of season extension for large-scale commercial in-ground growers. So if you're over in Virginia in the Shenandoah Valley in the spring of the year, you drive along the roads there and you will see acre after acre of little tunnels just going across whatever crop they're trying to grow. Their systems are very easily to put together. You would think that it's a lot of work. It's not. The PVC pipe just needs to be pushed into the ground, so if the ground's soft, you can just shove it right in on the other side, and you can buy your frost cloth in different lengths. So if you've got an 8-foot wide piece of frost cloth, you can make it 300 foot long. It doesn't take long for a guy to grab one end of it and the other guy just to start walking the rows and just stretch that stuff right out and drop clips on it. Very fast system to deploy, very fast system to take back up. You'll get in a rhythm after a while and you'll understand how easy and fast it is. So this is probably the most effective way that I see large scale growers doing it. Obviously a high tunnel is 30 by 70, 30 by 96. So you can only grow so much in that area, but if you've got acre after acre of cropland and you're wanting a season extension, this is the way to go. You can buy different materials to put on there. There's frost cloth that you can put. It comes in different thicknesses for different temperature variations, so you'll have to investigate that for whatever crop that you're wanting to grow, or you can contact us and we can help you with recommendations on XYZ crop that you're interested in. There's also some plastics now that are on the market. If you look here on the same page, down in the bottom right-hand corner, you're going to see the plastic with little slits in the side. And what we're trying to achieve here, the manufacturer is to trap in enough sun's heat to keep the plant warm, but also allow enough of it to breathe. There's a new material on the market right now. I have not played with it, so I can't endorse it, but there's actually a plastic that has small holes that are pushed into the plastic that the manufacturer is saying that once it drops below 50 degrees, the plastic actually seals itself and seals those holes up. So that might be something that you guys may be interested in looking in. I have not played with that material yet, but I am kindly interested and excited about that. So you can look at that. A couple companies, Johnny Select Seed actually has that material right now on their website. So if you're interested in reading about it, you can hop on there and take a look. Depending on the crop being grown, this category could also include frost cloth that's simply draped over the plants at night and removed the following morning. If we look over to the far left-hand side here, that last picture, you're going to see that frost cloth kind of draped across the plant. I utilize this system a lot on my squash and zucchini plants personally. We know the pollinators have got to come in there and hit those flowers, or unless you're going to self them yourself. So a lot of times I will just lay the frost cloth loose and blouse it over top of those cucumbers or squash this time of the year. Weatherman might call for a frost next week, but we know historically that we might not have another frost for another 3 weeks. So instead of having that one killing frost to take out your fall garden, extend it a little bit longer and get out there and cover it up a couple of nights and with the frost cloth. And you don't need the hoops or the clips, you can just drape it and let it lay. Remember, if it's a windy night, usually it doesn't frost. So usually frost on still, quiet night, so you don't really have to worry about pinning it down and worry about the wind picking it up. Just go out with the wife or the kids a little bit before sunset and have them help you drape that across the crop. It always helps to have a buddy to do that with. High tunnels, guys. We're standing in a high tunnel right here. This is a 30 by 60 high tunnel that we're in. If you're fortunate enough to have the room and have the money to put up a high tunnel, these things can be fantastic to do season extension in. You can actually go a step further and you can actually bring in supplemental heat inside this thing. Different ways you can do that, but you can bring in supplemental heat and you could actually keep the crops alive through the month of January and February if you so want to. Problem that we run into in West Virginia is it's easy to heat the high tunnel, but we need the sunlight to make the plant grow. So usually your tomatoes and your peppers and plants that are sun-loving cucumbers, they have a hard time growing even if you keep the temperature up without grow lights inside these high tunnels. But lettuces, turnips, rutabagas, onions, any type of lettuce, spinach, Swiss chard, all of that type of stuff will actually grow quite well. Cabbage inside these high tunnels in the wintertime if you can keep the temperature warm enough. If not, then use the month of January and February to kind of clean up your high tunnel and do some repair work and get ready for the spring planting season. They're probably the fastest growing method for season extension for large scale growers. I will say that that is true for a lot of people that are growing specialty crops. These high tunnels are really taking off across the country. You see them springing up. You guys have probably drove around. About every elementary school in the state now has one, or middle school's got one somewhere studying to teach the kids about ag, which is fantastic. Allows for almost year-round production, like I was saying. About January and February it kind of gets a little hard. Often confused with the greenhouse, but tunnels are not heated, and the cooling they offered is raising or lowering the sidewalls. So we'll talk about that really quick, the differences between a high tunnel and a greenhouse. Is a greenhouse will have heat. A greenhouse will have vent fans on each end and a vent on the far end that will actually help cool air through the house and cool it, and then the heaters come on and obviously heat it. High tunnels do not have that technology. They do not have heaters in them. We have sides here that actually roll up to about 3 foot on each side that allows cross ventilation, and that's how you cool the house. Once again, very similar to the cold frame, if you're not on your property, when the temperature rises above a certain degree to raise up the side, or on the property in the evening time when the temperature dips to lower the sides, you're going to run into an issue with your high tunnel. So if you're one of the people that work a lot and you're not going to be around, you can buy automated sides that work on a thermostat. They work very similar to that hinge that I was talking about. You can set the parameter and say, hey, thermostat, temperature drops below 54 degrees, lower my sides down. The temperature raises above 60 degrees inside the high tunnel, raise my sides up. And you can kindly let the thermostat and the motors control your sides and ventilation. It's a very, very nice thing to have if you've got a lot of high tunnels. Otherwise, they offer many of the same perks as a greenhouse as far as production systems go, and they do. There's not much that you can't do in a high tunnel that you can't do in a greenhouse. You're just limited on time and light. But I do know some people who have put power in their high tunnel and they have grow lights in their high tunnel. So, you know, you can do that, and that's achieving two things for you. One, you're given that supplemental light during the dark time of the year when we're only getting maybe 7 hours of sunlight a day, and if it's a cloudy day, we're not getting any sunshine. And most of those lights give off residual heat. So you can actually heat up the inside of your greenhouse when those lights are on and running and keep the air temperature a little bit warmer too. You can utilize in-ground, raised beds, tabletops, hydroponic, aquaponic system. You guys can't see it, but back here in the far corner of my high tunnel is actually an aquaponic system. We had to unplug it so you guys could hear me, so the water is not running the whole time. But we actually keep one in this high tunnel. These towers that you see behind me here, they actually have heaters that go down into the water to keep the water warm, so we can run these in the wintertime without them freezing. But we've still got to have the sunlight to grow whatever crop that we're growing. Lettuce works fantastic in these in the wintertime because it's a low light plant. You can be acquired through an NRCS equip program, so if you're interested in high tunnel and you have property, you can contact us. Our email addresses are at the end of this presentation, and of course you can hit us up through Facebook. If anybody is interested in this, the NRCS government arm of the USDA actually does a cost share program, and they will do 90% of the cost of these high tunnels. So, other words, if you want to buy a $10,000 high tunnel, they will cover $9,000 of it. You're on the hook for $1,000 to get one put on your property. You still have to construct it yourself and run utilities, so there's a little bit more to it than just having it delivered to your house. But that's a very nice program. We actually have Brad Cochran on our staff, who is very well versed in this program, and if anybody is interested, please contact us, and Brad can definitely help you guys start that process. Can be used year-round, but increase your growing season by 4 to 6 weeks more on either side of traditional growing season. So with the high tunnels or any cold season extension that we're talking about here today, guys, that's about what we're saying. You can get 4 to 6 weeks in the spring and 4 to 6 weeks on average on the fall end. So right here in the Charleston, West Virginia area, the last 10 years in a row, our average frost date's been between October 17th and October 20th. So we're pushing up on that right now. Now this year it may not frost until the 1st of November, who knows? Could frost next week. But traditionally speaking, that's what we're saying. So let's take October 20th. If we're going to go 4 to 6 weeks, and that puts us at Thanksgiving, between Thanksgiving and Christmas time, before it gets a little too cold or the light levels of the sunshine start to drop off where we can't really produce tomatoes and peppers. However, you guys can still continue to grow some of those low light cold crops, like the lettuces and radishes, turnips, that type of thing, inside these high tunnels. So it's really fascinating to be able to go out into your high tunnel or your season extension if you've done low tunnels on Thanksgiving Day and you're feeding your family and you say, hey, I picked these out of the garden yesterday. And everybody else was like, well, my tomatoes died weeks ago. Well, you know, season extension. So it's very important you can keep these tomatoes going. I personally have kept tomatoes alive in the Kanawha Valley all the way up through about the 16th of December before my plants succumb to it just being too chilly and not enough light, or using season extension. High tunnels do require some expertise in construction. If you're handy and you've built barns, you've built houses in your life before, then a high tunnel is not going to be that complicated. If you're one of the people that haven't really dealt with construction stuff before, you may find that it should be a little intimidating to put one of these up, so you may have to hire a contractor. Basically, I tell everybody they're a big erector set. They're all metal, and they come with instructions. There's a lot of YouTube videos from manufacturers showing you where to start. So even if you're somebody who's not really handy, but you've got the know-how to access information and the confidence to execute, you could probably put one of these up. I've seen it done a lot. They come in different shapes. You can get round or Gothic arch. I know once again you guys might not be able to see back here, but this is considered a Gothic arch more than a traditional arch or a Quonset hut. I like the Gothic arch styles a little bit better because where they come up to a sharper peak, it allows for better heat distribution inside the greenhouse. It gives you a little bit more height and headroom too if you want to grow tall crops, vining crops inside here. The Gothic arch has a pitched roof, which makes life a bit easier for winter snow control. So that was the second most important thing about these Gothic arch. Now we don't get a whole bunch of snow in West Virginia, but we can. One winter may be snowless, the next winter it may be snow on the ground all winter. I mean, we've all experienced that. So when those snowy events happen, by having the steeper sides on these greenhouses, you'll be able to slough that snow down. Remember, if it's a greenhouse, you're heating the inside, so as the snow falls on the plastic, it's going to kindly melt with the heat inside. But these high tunnels might not be the case, so snow will collect on it, and it can collapse them if you're not getting enough snow to shove off. A little tidbit of advice there: if you are in a snow belt area of West Virginia, higher elevation where it snows a lot and you're worried about that, keep a push broom in your greenhouse. They come in different sizes and lengths, the smallest being a 20 by 48 and the largest being a 30 by 96. So this right here is a 30 by 60 that I'm standing in, but you can get these down as little as 20 foot wide, 48 feet long, and then a 30 by 96 is exactly the standard size. When somebody says I have a standard size greenhouse or high tunnel, that's currently what we're talking about. Got an alarm going off out here. I apologize for that, guys. Rimmel high tunnels have shown to be the best quality to the ones that West Virginia State University has utilized. So I came from West Virginia State University. A few of my staff members did too. We did a lot of high tunnel work there. We've done Farm Techs, we've done Seed Country Supply high tunnels, we've done the Rimmel. Rimmel seems to be the best quality. It seems to have the thicker metals, better swages on the pipe, the instructions are clear, customer service is a little bit better. I'm not saying that the other guys have bad customer service, but Rimmel just seems to really be on top of their game when it comes to that. But Rimmel probably is one of the more expensive high tunnels that you can buy. I don't like the badmouth companies. I will caution people to stay away from the Farm Tech ones. Personal experience, the ones that I have seen go up in the state of West Virginia did not seem to last very long. Either wind or snow ended up collapsing them. And that was basically due to the metal that they use. They use a thinner gauge metal than what Rimmel and Seed Country Supply does. So that is something to think about. If you're one of these people that wants to pull their plastic off their high tunnel in the winter months, I know people that do that actually conserve the life of their plastic, then you might consider a Farm Tech, because that way the snow would just fall right through and not collect on the plastic. Once again, if you guys need more information on that, please feel free to reach out to us and we can have a conversation with you individually about quality control and company order. Greenhouses, very similar to high tunnels in the term of the shape and the structure. Production systems can be used. Nothing in the ground, no raised beds. Not necessarily true. I know people now that are growing in greenhouses that have raised beds, and not so much grown in the ground like they would a high tunnel, but definitely raised beds, hydroponic systems inside those greenhouses. In West Virginia, you can grow year-round in the greenhouse. You sure can. Like I was telling you guys, there's plenty of crops out there that don't need a lot of sunlight that'll grow, but if you want to invest the money and put the grow lights in your greenhouse, you can grow tomatoes. I worked 10 years on a tomato research project. I've done peppers, I've done watermelon, I've done cucumbers, and I've grown them year-round. Usually the month of August and September are the hardest months to grow inside greenhouses due to the temperature. It gets too hot. It's really easy to keep the greenhouse warm here. Keeping it cool is where we actually run into trouble. A lot of people never think about that. But it depends on what type of greenhouse you got too. So if you've got a greenhouse where the roof actually opens up, what we call a clamshell roof, and it will let all that heat out, those actually work really, really well during the hot summer months to cool down the greenhouse. If you're more of a traditional Gothic arch or Quonset hut greenhouse that's just got pad and vent wall cooling, it gets a little difficult in 90 degree and above weather to keep that greenhouse below 115 inside. So usually what we did at our range of greenhouses is August and September was the cleanup months. That's when we broke everything down and sterilized and cleaned, and we didn't grow crops in there. Greenhouses have a furnace system for heating and allowing the structure to be cozy through the cold winter months. There's different ways to heat these greenhouses. Most people here in West Virginia will probably have forced air gas like you do in your house. You can hang 2 heaters at opposite ends of the greenhouse to heat, but you can't run those same ones on propane. You can do geothermal, which is really cool if you can afford to put that system in, and you can do boiler, which would run off natural gas, oil, or propane too, and run steam heat through the greenhouse, which would be the most expensive way, but is the best way to heat a greenhouse as a dry radiant heat. In the summer, the ventilation and cooling system includes a series of fans, vents, and cooling pad to keep the cool air moving. Just like I said, that's relative. If the humidity is high enough and the temperature is high enough, you're just constantly going to be fighting against the temperature and praying that the sun sets behind the trees before your plants die. It can get very difficult to cool a greenhouse in August and September here in West Virginia. Once again, that depends on what crop you're growing too. Greenhouses, even with cooling systems in place, a greenhouse will be well over 100 degrees in hot summer months. Absolutely. If it's 90 degrees outside and you don't have any ventilation running in your greenhouse, you can heat the inside of your greenhouse up to 130, 140 degrees like that. Believe it or not, it's happened. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've even actually smelled plastic before in a hot tub or in a greenhouse one time where something was getting hot and the plastic was actually putting the smell off. Running the ventilation systems and cooling it, you can take that same ambient air temperature that's 90 degrees outside and get close to that temperature within 5 to 8 degrees. So you could probably bring your temperature down to 98. But here's the thing, guys. Most plants still are suffering at 98 degrees. They're suffering at 90 degrees. Pollen's only viable up to about 88 degrees. So your tomatoes and your cucumbers and your peppers that are all in bloom, the pollen that's inside those blooms will die once the temperature gets above 88 degrees for about 40 minutes or more. So think about that for a minute. This summer we had day after day of 90-degree temperatures. It was rough. It was rough to manage greenhouses this year. It's hard to keep them cool. It's not like we have air conditioning inside the greenhouse. Most growers and operations produce flowers, bedding plants, and perennials, vegetable transplants, fall mums, and poinsettias. So all of these things allow a grower to kindly be out of his greenhouse at certain times of the year to be able to clean things and grow different crops. So if you're trying to buy the greenhouse to grow food for your family in, I think a high tunnel is probably the better way to go. But if you're somebody who's interested in hitting the market and you're wanting to grow bedding plants or you want to dabble in hydroponic tomatoes or peppers, then the greenhouse would probably be your better option to go with. Greenhouses do require a huge upfront expense. If you're wanting a full package, if you're wanting a 30 by 96 standard greenhouse with all the vents, the cooling systems, the heaters, all delivered to your house in a package off a tractor trailer, you're looking at about $25,000 to $32,000 before you put the thing up and construct it. So think about that for a little bit. The high tunnel, like I said, you can get a really nice high tunnel with automated sides and everything that does all the work for you for about $12,000. Or a little bit less, between $9,000 and $12,000 for that same system. So you're looking at about a 2/3 savings, but you still have construction costs. We usually tell everybody to add on about $3,500 to $5,000 on top of that for construction costs and what other little things that you would need to buy. You will have to purchase some lumber for the boards along the bottom that does not come with your greenhouse kit. So you'll have a little bit of stuff that you still need to buy, but not much. Greenhouses, many different designs on greenhouses, guys. If you drive around here in West Virginia, you've got Bob's over in Mason County, you've got Britt's in Putnam County, you've got Britt's Farms up on the hill there in Putnam County. I like going to their places because a guy like me who's in the greenhouses, I can see all the different years of evolution of technology in the greenhouses. So there's a lot of different sizes and shapes kindly there to fit whatever need that you need to go. If you pick up the phone and call a greenhouse manufacturer and say, hey, I'm interested in growing X, Y, Z, they're probably going to tell you what they recommend. I highly recommend that you take their recommendations to heart because they're the ones selling and manufacturing and they kindly know what they're going to do with what you can do with what they're selling. Decide what you're trying to accomplish and then work with the distributor to determine the best meets your needs, and that's what we're talking about here. Just meet with the distributor. You can call us or contact us again. We can give you some names and numbers of some companies that you can reach out to that we've worked with personally here in the area, and they can come out to your property and they can help you do some stuff. If you're going full born into a greenhouse, it would be a good idea to have a market for your stuff. Absolutely, do not buy the greenhouse, construct the greenhouse, or even the high tunnel if you don't have a market for what you're going to grow. So go out and start talking to people. Grow some stuff now this year in your backyard, some small stuff so people know that you're capable of growing and what you can grow. And go out and start hitting up the restaurants and the different places that you can sell produce at. Once again, you can contact us. We can help you do that. Give you some ideas and even get you in front of some people who may be willing to buy some of your stuff. But once you figure out your market, then you can determine, do I need a high tunnel? Do I need a greenhouse? Or do I not need neither? Maybe I can get by with low tunnels and do hoops with the pipe out in my traditional garden. There's a lot of different ways that you can go about these. Hydroponics and aquaponics, many ways to extend the growing season. So one cool thing I was telling you guys about these towers is we can put a heater in it. So by keeping the water warm, we're keeping the root zone of the plants warm. So the top of the plant can actually take a little bit more stress because it's out in the open. It can take the heat, it can take the cool. But the roots, if the roots really have a wide temperature swings in the water, that can really be detrimental to the plant. So by us keeping heaters in here, we're keeping the root zone in an even, steady temperature, and we can really produce stuff in this high tunnel through some really, really nasty cold days by just keeping that water warm. So that's a cool thing. Yes, we have a question?
I have a question. I was just wondering, like, maybe you could talk about the price of these tower units.
These
'Cause
tower units?
I know they're expensive, but
They are expensive. The basic tower unit, and don't hold me to this, guys, because I'm not a salesman for the tower gardens, but I think for a wheel with a mobile base, the tank, the pump, and I think 6 tower tops, you're looking at about $900 for that setup. They are expensive. They are. One great thing that I like about being in West Virginia, is we like to make stuff out of things that really wasn't intended to. So once again, if you're a handy person, you may not have to buy one of these towers. You could probably go to Lowe's and buy stuff right off the shelf and manufacture your own hydroponic system. Matter of fact, I know you can. And there's plenty of blueprints online where people have done stuff. So I encourage everybody to read and get as much information as you can about what you want to do long before you ever pick up your pocketbook and buy anything. And that way you know exactly what you want to do and if you can accomplish it. But these towers are nice because they're right out of the box. They all snap together. They've got the technology in them. I really can't knock them, but they are pricey. They very well are pricey. You can resell them if you decide 5 years down the road that you're not interested in doing it no more. You're not going to get the full price back out of them, but you can probably get at least half to a third of your money back. So they do hold a little bit of value. You can produce under tunnel or greenhouse scenarios and have a much longer growing season than traditionally grown crops. And the reason why we're saying that is because we can keep that water warm. We can also put lights and grow lights on those crops and really get them to produce. The tank heaters work nice, guys, but they also, I will recommend if you're going to buy tank heaters, whether you're making your own system or you're going to buy one of these towers, buy 1 or 2 extra heaters. Because these aren't things that you can just run to Lowe's and buy, and stuff will break, things will wear out, and it always tends to break right when you need it the most. So I tell everybody, always have a couple extra pumps, always have a couple extra heaters on hand when you're dealing with hydroponics. That way if something dies, you can say, oh, I can just plug it and get back up and running. When utilizing the tank heaters, you can also wrap the tower system with a cloth and cages to keep the heat in for longer periods of time. So if you go to Lowe's or Home Depot, you go back in the HVAC aisle, you're going to see foil mylar. It usually comes in rolls, looks like bubble wrap, but it's not quite bubble wrap. It's got foil on it. You can actually wrap those systems. You can wrap the tank at the bottom, and that'll help hold in and conserve heat. It's a great thing to do. For my folks that are higher and higher elevations, it's in Summersville, Nettie, Richwood, those areas of West Virginia, that would be something that I would highly recommend you doing, whether you've got a tank or you've got a tower here. Wrap your stock tank, whatever your heater's in, to conserve that energy. That'll save you some money too in the long run. Season extension wrap up here for homeowners. Season extension can mean getting the last bit of production before winter hits. Like I said, we always tend to have 1 or 2 frosts before it just turns off cold every morning. So you can really get a jump and keep your garden going a little bit longer. You can also get that early jump in the spring by getting the first tomato and impress all your friends and family and say, hey, I got my first garden tomato, and it's May 10th. For commercial producers, season extension can be a difference between profit loss, both from crop loss prevention and extension production times, allowing for more production. If you're a commercial grower, the longer you've got a fresh crop that the local restaurant or the local grocery store or local produce wholesaler is buying from you, that's more money in your pocket. As soon as you stop producing, they're going to start going and calling their wholesale brokers, and they're going to start bringing and trucking stuff in from Florida and Arizona and California. So by all means, if you're doing this for production, you definitely need to be investing and investigating a season extension for your crop. It'll make more money for you. Can be a low cost or high cost depending on which direction you go. If you're just starting out, I don't think that I would tell you to go on Amazon today or call up a distributor and order a $10,000 high tunnel, but you can definitely play around with the PVC pipes and the clips and the plastic. That's where I would start at. If you're the backyard grower, then get the cold frame. Look into cold frames. There's several blueprints online. You may even have some old storm windows in your garage right now that we're going to put back on your house that you never did. Those storm windows would work great for a cold frame. And regardless if it's a bad tool to have in your back pocket as a producer. So, even if you're not going to utilize this system, at least you know about it, and at least you know you can deploy it. So maybe that's something you're interested in right now. So, that's fine. But maybe in the spring you've decided, hey, I'd like to put out a few tomato plants early and just dip my toe in the water. That's what I would recommend you guys do. Is there any questions, Connie? Do we have any questions from anybody?
I'm not seeing any questions online. I have another question myself, though.
Yes.
Okay, so I know some of our people are interested in growing garlic,
Yes.
and I think maybe garlic is hardy enough to handle it, but can you get a jump on garlic if you do
Sure.
season extension
Sure,
as well?
yeah.
Can you
But
talk about that a little
we're
bit?
changing the environment the plant's in. So to the plant, it automatically thinks, hey, it's warm temperature, I'm getting water, I'm getting light. Hey, it's spring's here. I mean, we're creating spring for the plant. So absolutely, anything that grows outside can be grown in a high tunnel effectively. Now, is there a learning curve? Yes. Each crop's a little bit different. Each person's house and location is going to be different. I have people call me and like, Chris, I've got this problem. Well, the first thing I always like to look at is location, what they're growing, what crop they're growing, because there's so many different types of vegetables out there. We know there's hundreds of tomato plants. There's several different types of garlic. Sometimes you have to buy the right plant for the right growing too. So, one year you might say, hey, the elephant garlic did better than this garlic did. So you have to play with it. There's a little bit of a learning curve there. Guys, if you've got any questions, please feel free to email me. I'm Chris Postaway. My email address is there. Melissa Stewart's email address is there. You can also reach out to us on Facebook anytime you want. Call our office, and we will gladly field your questions. And if we don't have the answers, we'll get you in front of the person that does. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. We don't have any questions, Connie?
I don't see any more.
All right, guys, I appreciate it, and we'll see you back next week, okay?